Please welcome the Margaret and Terry Stent Director of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Stephanie Stebish.
Although we convene in cyberspace, we want to gratefully acknowledge the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here in Washington, D.C. The Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we convene, and the labor of people who were enslaved in constructing the historic building that is home to the Smithsonian American Art Museum, one of our homes. Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this virtual opening and preview to celebrate the special exhibition, Printing the Revolution, the Rise and Impact of Chicano Graphics, 1965 to now. And we're delighted that over 1,000 of you have tuned in tonight. This groundbreaking exhibition is beautiful, inspiring, provocative, and timely. It tells the story of the many extraordinary artists who used art as a catalyst to inspire change, using both old and new forms of printmaking to spread their messages of both protest and hope. This exhibition was a labor of love, developed and so skillfully led by Dr. E. Carmen Ramos, who serves as our acting chief curator and curator of Latinx art. She was joined by curatorial assistant Claudia Zapata, the smart and equally hardworking colleague on this project. You have to imagine they spent several years on this project, crisscrossing the country to meet with artists, print scholars, colleagues, and many collectors. They made the selections for the exhibition, as well as the publication, where they wrote 2 key essays. And it is a handsome catalog. I highly recommend it to you, and you can purchase it online already. It was some 10 years ago, in 2010, that Carmen joined the Smithsonian American Art Museum. And since that time, she has doubled the size of our Latinx art collection, which is considered one of the most significant of its kind in the country, and certainly museums like ours that are national and really tell the story of American art. Carmen's strategic approach to building SAAM's holdings through major contributions has both contributed to new scholarship in the field and allowed us to share our collection with communities across the country. You may remember Carmen's acclaimed exhibitions. One, of course, was Our America, the Latino presence in American art. And this exhibition traveled to 8 cities over 4 years. Maybe you saw it in your community. And then more recently, Down These Mean Streets, Community in Place in Urban Photography. It's traveled in 2018 to New York City, where it was seen at El Museo del Barrio. And of course, works by Latinx artists are always present in our galleries, where visitors can see their works in dialogue with others by US artists. We're very proud to share this exhibition with you, with the nation, and with the world. We look to these artists not only for beauty and inspiration, but also to their diverse artistic perspectives that provide a fuller understanding of the American experience and a more inclusive view of America and American art. The powerful artworks presented in this show from the 1960s to now highlight our country's history, both the good and the bad, and provides insights on how we grapple with many of the same issues we are facing today. And again, since we couldn't gather in person, we wanted you to meet some members of the community of artists and collectors whose contributions are featured in the show. You'll be hearing from them shortly. Let me now do my duty to thank and recognize the many people who helped realize this exciting exhibition project. I begin with gratitude to my colleague, Eduardo Diaz, who leads the Smithsonian Latino Center and administers the Latino Initiatives Pool. Vital support for the exhibition came from this source, and Eduardo has been a true partner in our vision to build the leading program in Latinx art. I also thank many donors that you see listed alphabetically for their generous support. Please note the support of the Ford Foundation and HP. And I'm particularly proud of our many commissioners who stepped in early and generously to fund the project. Please note the Honorable Aida Alvarez, who's been a steadfast supporter and champion of our Latinx programs. I also want to thank our good friends at Tacobamba. For those who live locally, we offered an optional prepaid dinner for you to enjoy with the virtual preview tonight. I'm enjoying it myself. We're delighted to present this program free of charge. Thanks again to you and many other supporters. Please consider your support for the American Art Museum. It is easy to do with a donation to the museum via the donate button on the event website. The exhibition itself opens on November 20th and will be on view through 2021, through August 8th. Now I'm delighted to introduce Dr. E. Carmen Ramos, really the leading curator of Latinx art and one of the hardest working curators I know. She will share an overview of the show. Congratulations to all the artists. I thank all the donors, and congratulations, Carmen.
Thank you, Stephanie, and welcome guests, artists, and supporters. Bienvenidos. I'm excited to introduce you to Printing the Revolution, an exhibition drawn from SAAM's permanent collection, which considers the rise and impact of the Chicano graphics movement that blossomed starting in the 1960s. As many of our viewers know, the civil rights era was transformational for Mexican Americans when adopting the moniker Chicano reconceived of their place on the national stage. To call yourself Chicano, a formerly derogatory term for Mexican Americans, became a cultural and political badge of honor that rejected melting pot assimilation and challenged the racial hierarchies of US society. Printmakers active during these formative years of the Chicano civil rights movement, or El Movimiento, played a pivotal role in projecting this revolutionary new consciousness. This exhibition explores how this early civil rights activity set the foundation for a noteworthy and politically engaged graphic arts movement that continues to thrive today, over 5 decades later, among artists of Mexican descent in the United States and their cross-cultural collaborators. This exhibition is distinctive because of how it defines the field of Chicanx graphics. Printing the Revolution features works by artists working across the United States, from California to the East Coast. While screen printed posters were the dominant mode of printmaking early on, our exhibition shows how Chicanx artists and their peers embrace a wide range of techniques and approaches, from lithography to installation art, interactive conceptual art projects, and public interventions. Our thematically organized exhibition allows us to show how artists of different generations marshaled similar artistic and conceptual strategies. The section Urgent Images considers how artists valued direct community engagement around immediate concerns. Some of the earliest works in the show reveal the important role of the United Farm Workers as a catalyst for artistic activism. Artists inventively combined text, image, and striking graphics to broadcast the union's message. Rupert Garcia deftly wove racial and global sign systems in posters that demanded ethnic studies across college campuses. Yolanda Lopez retooled pop culture and nationalist symbols to combat police abuse and support immigration reform. This section also includes works that address the pressing issues of today. The exhibition opens with Justice for Our Lives, a powerful site-specific installation by Ori Original that was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. This ongoing artwork includes portraits of people killed during interactions with law enforcement. Original makes his direct and individualized portraits available online for users to share on social media or to use in protests. These portraits are the basis of Original's own public interventions that create a space for protest and mourning. A New Chicano World, our second section, considers the generative way artists envision and revise notions of Chicano culture and identity. To lay claim to the indigenous heritage of Mexican people, collectives like the Royal Chicano Air Force probed Mesoamerican culture. Their prints often serve as part of elaborate choreographed events catered to the everyday common person. As part of a cultural reclamation effort to value Mexican culture in the United States, printmakers like Carmen Ramos and Juan de Dios Mora mined the everyday to shed light on borderland cultures that are rarely acknowledged as part of the American experience. Artists like Ester Hernandez and Irena G. Cervantes played a key role in questioning early pronouncements that marginalized Chicana and LGBTQ perspectives. The largest section in the exhibition, Reimagining National and Global Histories, considers how artists visualize American history based on the experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Starting with the Cuban Revolution and the Vietnam War, artists like Malaquias Montoya express solidarity with people around the world, fighting dictatorship, US intervention, colonialism, and racial oppression. Artists adopted the style of post-revolutionary Cuban posters or devised new formats like contemporary codices inspired by pre-Columbian examples to reflect on our own times, from the aftermath of 9/11 to the experience of migrants today. As Claudia Zapata and I curated this exhibition, we soon realized that artists use portraiture as a window into history. Artists often combine text and image to highlight change makers that altered the course of global history. They portrayed figures who fought against Spanish colonialism, activists for racial justice, labor leaders, and iconic cultural figures whose work remains vital today. The fourth and final section, Public Interventions and Digital Innovations, explores the subversive ways artists inserted their work into the public sphere and how graphics have changed in the digital age. We present documentation of Barbara Carrasco's groundbreaking computer graphics artwork, Pesticides, that was part of the Public Art Fund series, Messages to the Public, which was projected in Times Square in New York City. The show features digital-born artwork by Lalo Alcaraz, Julio Salgado, and others that are designed to circulate on the internet and social media platforms. We present interactive works by Chico Gonzalez and Zeke Peña, who use augmented reality technologies to add a layer of user interactivity to their prints. Printing the Revolution acknowledges how Chicano artists, print centers, and networks welcomed and nurtured artists from other communities. Jas Sances, a Sicilian American artist born in Massachusetts, co-founded Mission Gráfica with Chilean-born artist René Castro in San Francisco's Mission District. We include the first portfolio of the Dominican York Proyecto Gráfica, a collective of Dominican American artists whose founding was in part inspired by Chicano print centers. We feature works by Asian American artist Nancy Home, Puerto Rican artist Poli Marichal, and other Latinx artists like Ester Hernandez, who were all active in Chicano print networks. This is one way our exhibition tracks the impact of Chicano graphics within the larger field of American art. It's been a privilege to work on this project and a thought-provoking experience for it to unfold in our current times. We feel proud that this exhibition contests the exclusion of Chicanx artists from the histories of US printmaking. Our show reveals that the quest to create inclusive, anti-racist cultural institutions, national narratives, and art histories has long been the practice of artists of color and their allies and collaborators. Thank you for listening to this introduction. Maybe we could just let you all see some of the works that I was talking about. In one moment, we'll begin our discussion with our artists. And now, to continue exploring ideas and artworks featured in our exhibition, I welcome Claudia Zapata. Claudia is a PhD candidate at Southern Methodist University, specializing in Chicanx and Latinx art. She's been a curatorial assistant for Printing the Revolution since 2018 and has been instrumental in researching how graphics have changed in the digital age. Together, we'll have a short panel discussion with 3 artists featured in the exhibition. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you, Carmen. I'll briefly introduce our featured artists for tonight, who will be in dialogue with Carmen and I throughout the evening. Juan Fuentes is a prolific Chicano printmaker, working for over 40 years on issues ranging from the anti-war movement to indigenous rights. He was the previous executive director of Mission Gráfica at the Mission Cultural Center for Latino Arts, one of the major print centers dedicated to transnational artistic exchange. Ester Hernandez is an internationally acclaimed Chicana and Yaqui artist based out of San Francisco. She's best known for her depictions of Chicana, Latina, and Native women through her pastels, prints, and installations. And Zeke Peña is a transmedia artist originally from El Paso, Texas. His graphic narratives interweave mythologies and folklore of the US-Mexico borderlands and its communities. Thank you, Juan, Ester, and Zeke, for joining us. Our first question is for Juan Fuentes. Juan, you've had an extensive multi-generational art practice that has consistently highlighted Chicano art's truly international intersections of graphic arts and global activism. What have been some of your aesthetic and ideological influences throughout your career that have helped articulate your solidarity with communities of color in the United States and around the world?
Was that all? Okay, well, first I want to thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be in this exhibition and be part of this discussion. I want to thank the curators and the work that you've done, and also that advancing what Chicano art is. I think from what you've put in the exhibit and the way that it's been broken down, I feel like it's an advancement from prior exhibitions of Chicano, what Chicano art is and how far it can go and has gone. So I applaud you for that. There's so many things that have impacted me in terms of raising my social consciousness. But I'm going to focus on basically 5 things because I know time is limited. But the first is basically that I was recruited into the Educational Opportunity Program at San Francisco State during the tail end of the strike. I got to San Francisco in 1969, and it was the concept of third world studies that basically, gave me a different critical view of what the world was about. And it also, there was a unity that I had never experienced before. And that unity was that we had these different communities coming together. So that was the first one, basically, third world unity. The second was my opposition to the Vietnam War and my participation in the Third World Coalition against the war. So that was one. And one of the things that came out of that for me, and it came from the Vietnamese, was basically their quote that basically said, one struggle, many fronts. And for me, it resonated because it meant that, we could do this on a lot of different levels. And I didn't have to necessarily be an organizer. And it kind of validated that I could be an artist and I could have an impact and I could do something. And that we had to basically, push back on by whatever means necessary, basically. So that was the second one. The third one basically was the fact that I took my first not my first art class, but my first class by a Chicano professor, and that was Rupert Garcia. And he was a prolific individual and a good friend of mine. And basically he taught me the basic rudiments of silk screen, and his approach to making posters always had the beginning, and we had a political edge to it. And I was drawn to that. And he was always like willing to teach. And I got a chance to go to his studio and work with him on some of the individual prints that he did. And I was always like very moved by how precise and how direct he was around putting an image and a message together. And basically, you know, I tried to do that with my work as well. And the other person was Malaquias Montoya. Malaquias's, you know, commitment and his community connection and his commitment to teaching. And Malaquias gave me the opportunity to teach when he left CCA. I took over his poster workshop, and I did it there. And basically, it's just there's always been a really camaraderie connection between Rupert, Malaquias, and myself. And so they, you know, I bow to them because they were the ones who brought me into it and got me going. So that's the third. The fourth one was my trip to Cuba with the Venceremos Brigade. I think it was in 1973 or 1974. And just being there and being able to see the way art was used for the people, and the billboards, the posters. In particular, I was moved by Rene Mederos, one of the Cuban poster artists. His series that he did on Vietnam and also on the Moncada barracks, the attack on the Moncada barracks, they were just mind-blowing. So many colors, and again, it was a certain kind of very flat use of photos and images, but very flat style, which is something that Rupert was doing and that I also emulated and I wanted to do. And I you know, in my early poster work, you see that same kind of effect. The other thing that was very moving to me was that the organization of OSPAL in Cuba, basically it was the organization of solidarity with the peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Well, they published a book called Tricontinental. And I brought some of those back with me after I was in Cuba with the Venceremos Brigade for a month. I brought some of those back with me, and inside the magazine, they were published in Spanish and different languages, but inside the magazine, there were political, you know, viewpoints, but also there was artwork in them.
Thank you, Juan.
Okay.
Thank you, Juan.
All right.
I just wanted to continue our conversation with the other artists. And thank you for your rich response. And I have great admiration for your work and of course that of Rupert Garcia and all the other artists in the show.
Thank you.
I have a question for Ester. Ester, you have been a critical figure in Chicana feminism alongside many of your peers like Yolanda Lopez, Judy Baca, Judith Hernandez, and Amalia Mesa Baines. Your images of empowered women changed the face of Chicano art. El Movimiento grew out of a confluence and overlapped with many other rights movements, including the feminist and gay liberation movements. Could you share with us what led to your focusing on queer communities and women's lives as a critical part of your art making?
Thank you, Carmen. I first of all want to start off just like Juan in thanking you, Carmen and Claudia and all of the staff there at the Smithsonian for going ahead with this incredible exhibition honoring us, especially in this time of this pandemic. So thank you so much for going on with the show. And I just want to say that it's been a long and bumpy road for some of us, and it's just so wonderful to be here. And I just want to congratulate all of the artists involved in this exhibition. And in regard to your question, I have to say that when I've said this many times before, is I was born into the movimiento. To begin with, I was born and raised into a woman-centered farm worker family in the San Joaquin Valley of California, with women who, along with their families, were involved in labor strikes as early as in the 1930s. And in the 60s, they became involved with the United Farm Workers Movement. And my father became one of the first persons in our barrio to join the union. So at a very early age, myself and my siblings were encouraged to be proud of our culture, to be proud of who we are, and to stand up for the rights of not only ourselves, but our family and our community. I have to say that without doubt, the words and actions of my family, especially the mujeres, gave form and meaning to my life as an artist that sustains me even to this day. So also, fortunately, my parents were great supporters of self-expression in the arts. And even though they worked long hours under sometimes very brutal conditions, they always found time to dance and celebrate life. So in general, although there have been so many people like Malaquias, like Rupert, like Amalia, like Judy, like Judith, I mean, Yolanda, I could go on. There's so many people who have been so important in my life's journey that I only have time, again, to mention a few events, and events in particular that sort of shaped my life. I guess one of the biggest ones, because although I was a child artist in the grape fields, making stencils out of grape leaves as a child, and seeing the movimiento, it wasn't until I had the opportunity, along with my community, to witness the United Farm Workers Historic March to Sacramento in the early 60s. And it was during that time that I saw the Teatro Campesino, and they were using music, song, teatro, the visual arts, and comedy. And it was the first time that I'd ever seen art being used as a tool for social change. And that just totally just made me see the world in a different way. So soon after that, I ran into Dolores Huerta, who was at a cultural event. Dolores has always been a supporter of the arts, and even Cesar. And she spoke to all of us women about the importance of us Chicanas in particular, creating visual images of ourselves, with including all of our, talking about all of our diversity and all of our multi-dimensional lives, because as she said, that in the media, we are being portrayed basically as people to fear or to pity. And I'm sad to say that that's still kind of the onda on mass media. So I decided at that point that I was going to make that one of the main focuses of my artwork. Moving on, in the 1970s, I was a student at UC Berkeley, and it was my first encounter with Chicana feminist movement. And we would have these incredible discussions about feminism, Chicana, Chicanx feminism in terms of race, class, and our place in the movimiento. It was that group of women, sisters there, were the first to publish my work. And it was also the first time that my work, the Virgen de Guadalupe, Defendiendo, it was the first time I encountered controversy and censorship. So anyway, moving on, in regards to the LGBTQ community, which embraced me in the early 60s, 70s, probably 70s, when the community was becoming devastated by AIDS. There was mass homophobia. Later on, there was this whole don't ask, don't tell. There was just immense and raw homophobia within the Chicano and outside of the Chicano community. But there were also a lot of gay, lesbian, LGBT community around who were still part of the community, but In many instances, their work was being censored because it was dealing with sexuality, and people weren't quite ready to share that, with the fear of it sort of, I don't know what, corrupting the youth of America, which was already getting corrupt, in my opinion, thankfully. But anyway, but nevertheless, we persevered. We stayed within the movimiento. We stayed within our cultural centers, and thankfully, there were people like Rene Yanez, Rupert Malaquias, who were just very open-minded and willing to share and create space for us. So in general, through our hard work and our persistence, we created a space within the movimiento to visually proclaim our right to love whoever we want. And so I'm just so proud now to see all of these young Chicano, Latinx people out there open and proud and doing all kinds of works on all kinds of levels within the art community and beyond. And this is the beauty of the movimiento, in my opinion. We are
Absolutely.
all the face of the movimiento. Enjoy the exhibit.
Thank you, Esther, so much.
Thank you, Esther. Zeke, now I'm going to ask you a question. So Zeke, your diverse body of work includes multimedia narrative approaches to interpreting the U.S. borderlands of the Southwest, specifically on the El Paso Juarez border. How do new technologies help you craft these visual stories? And how does user interactivity help support your artistic and political objectives?
Yeah, thank you so much, Carmen and Claudia, for all the work you've done. It's an honor to be here and share space with everyone, Esther and Juan. And so I've been using technology in my work since about 2003. I was started making community posters for events and open mics at a Resistencia bookstore in Red Salmon Arts in Austin, Texas, which is also when I was going to school and exposed to the work of Ester Hernandez, which has been like just one of my biggest inspirations. So it's amazing to be here and share some wall space. And also people like Jose Montoya and doing work with Raul Salinas, the founder of Resistencia bookstore. And working on those community graphics was when I started using my, a drawing tablet, which is really a big part of my studio work now. And a lot of my work is a blend of both, traditional drawing technique and using digital technologies. So the technology plays a role not only in the production of my work, but also in the publishing and distribution of the work. And, the print here that you're looking at, Nomad in Love, was printed by 65 Grados in Mexico City by Arturo Negrete, maestro of printmaking, and was also augmented, which means that it was kind of animated. So you can hold your phone or device up to the print and there'll be an animation that plays. There's a little bit of sound. And that was done by Augment El Paso, which was founded by David Figueroa, which I'm very grateful. You can see it there on the screen. And so I think that these, technologies, in addition to kind of continuing the tradition of what both Juan and Esther talk about, which is, how to take these issues that our communities are dealing with. For me, it's issues, in El Paso primarily, but also with folks that come from Juarez and collaborating with those folks from those communities. So how to take these issues and look at them and really try to find new ways of engaging, mostly with our youth. A lot of my work is directed towards young people because I think that's where my work can have a big impact, is in trying to I guess provide a space and also a way to think about these issues differently. Growing up on the border, it's not something that we always think about. I'm grateful to have been brought up by my mother and father who brought me up to kind of think about these things critically. But even then, it wasn't until I went to college that I really started diving into these issues. So I think that the technology, as times change, as we're on our phones all the time, we're on the web, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, it's just a little bit inevitable. So I'm just trying to find ways to, honor all the work that people like Juan and Ester have done in paving the path for, people like me, while also trying to introduce, these new technologies as a way of just kind of continuing along that path with the intent that hopefully young people will also pick it up as well.
Great, thank you so much.
Great, thank you all for such robust responses. Claudia and I had a question for you that we've been thinking about. It was very important for us to put together a multi-generational exhibition of Chicanx graphics because it remains such a thriving arena of cultural production back then and now. What has remained the same and changed over the past 5 decades of Chicanx graphics?
Well, I think it's just exactly what Zeke was saying is I think the biggest change that I've witnessed is the computer, and the ability to sort of get involved with social media on a whole other level. The ability to download all kinds of information and source information for your ideas. Your ability to reach new audiences. I mean, it just created a whole other world. With the challenges, because I think sometimes it's probably a lot, just we get sort of overloaded with a lot of information, and I just see it as another tool. So, and I see it in the hands of young people in particular, because I myself am still very much old school and hands-on. So I don't know. I just see, sadly, that that the state of the world is like horrible, very bad. I feel really bad for the future generations. When I think about global warming, when I think about how that impacts immigration, I mean, we could just go on and on and on. Even the presidency, the changes that are going on and all of that. I mean, there's just so much work that has to be done. And it's in the hands of the young people. That's how I see it. I am going to be personally 76 in a couple of weeks. So I see them and what they're doing, and they give me a lot of hope. And anything that I can do to be supportive of them, being a madrina, being a cheerleader, whatever I need to do, give them money, whatever, give them water, whatever. I'm there for them. So I think.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you so much. Juan or Zeke, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I would. I just think that a lot of things have changed and some haven't, but I think for the most part, we know the technology has changed it completely. And like Esther was saying, we're really kind of hands-on. I do still do a lot of my work, basically, cut and paste and hands-on. But the other thing is that I just think that things are more inclusive now. I think that racism is out there, and we know it's out there, and people are reacting to it. And I think, like Esther saying as well, is that I'm impressed with the young people that are out, because I think they're doing a lot of positive things, and the way they can get their messages out is so much quicker. We did posters, but posters were used in a certain way for communities, and a lot of those community organizations, they've been wiped out. So that's changed. But the fact that the poster had to be used in a certain way, because that's how the communities could use it. We could put it in a galeria, we could put it in a little barber shop, or in a taqueria, or in a bakery, or wherever, community centers. But now you can get it all over anyway through the internet. And I don't know, the method has changed, but people are still doing posters. There's still a lot of activity going on. I don't know, I'm just being redundant, but basically, I think it's changed, but mainly it's, the way we approach it as artists, I think is still kind of, there's a connection there with community, and and why we need to do what we do. That hasn't changed. We still know that, oppression is oppression. And that part of it is, we're still going to find ways to advance, our struggles. And I think that's happening. And I applaud young people because they're doing it.
Thank you, Juan.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I think Ester for me hit it right on the money. That all the technology and stuff and all the changes, and I think Juan too, right? Like it's not necessarily that. Unfortunately, I think the things that we would hope have changed haven't changed, and but the methods that we're addressing them with have changed. So at the heart of it are still similar struggles, but the way that we're going about addressing them and making work, and I, thinking about that work, I think has changed quite a bit. I think the one thing that's really exciting for me that both Ester and Juan expressed is that I'm also inspired by the young folks. I think that a lot of the conversations that we're having right now in terms of Latinx, Chicanx, brown folk, I mean, it's all these terms that we're talking about. And I think that we often get caught up in them, but I'm happy that we're having those conversations, because I think that as we move forward, it's good for us to think critically about these terms and also address some of the pitfalls, right? Like we can talk about the amazing work that's been done by people in the movement, but we also got to have conversations about anti-Blackness, anti-queerness, homophobia, these sorts of things in the movement. And I think that, what's exciting to me is that the young people are excited to do that work and are also willing to have those conversations. And so for me, I don't have the scope, I don't have the life to know exactly what's changed and what's the same. But I think that's one of the things that makes me really excited, is that we can have conversations and continue to, move forward while also honoring all the work that's been done before us.
Thank you so much, Zeke, and all the artists for your responses. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences with this graphic movement and your ideas about the future. Before we proceed to audience questions, we wanted to acknowledge an important part of this project, which has been connecting with collectors whose interest in Chicano graphics emerged during their own participation in the civil rights movement. We'd like to share a short segment of some interviews we held with several distinguished collectors who cumulatively have given SAAM 225 prints, not a small feat. We're so honored that Tomás Iberafrausto, Gilberto Cárdenas, Harriett and Ricardo Romo, and Rosa Terrazas, representing the estate of Margaret Santos, could talk to us about their early collecting and what motivated their donations. All of these donors have been educators and cultural workers who have devoted much of their lives to public service and Latinx cultural advocacy. I think of them as activist collectors and donors because their gifts have made our museum a more inclusive space that honors Latinx artists and histories. We plan to post the full set of interviews on our YouTube channel. Once this segment is over, we'll be back to welcome questions from our audience, and we remind everyone to use the question and answer function to submit your queries. Thanks.
We're beginning to do some posters and work. And I realize there's nothing in between. I'm not going to buy a mural. And this is just starting, and I'm going to follow it.
We weren't collecting, we just liked them. They were meaningful to us. We liked what they were doing with the young people. And eventually we had so many that we realized we had a collection, and we kind of stumbled into being collectors because we liked the work and it resonated. with things that were important to us in our own work.
Around the neighborhood, and since nobody wanted them, I started sort of taking them off the wall, or would ask, like they were like in front of a lot of Latino organizations, do you have another poster like that? And they said, yeah. Could I have one? They said yes. Or sometimes they would say, yes, we're selling them as a fundraiser, and they cost like $5. So I would give them $5. And so I started amassing a collection of posters from the community itself, from the walls of the community and from organizations in the community. And I really like them as a form of art.
Always kind of can smile and laugh a little bit, because every time I think she saw anybody she knew, she was like, do you have any posters for me? What did you collect at the last conference? I mean, she would even take me as a young girl. We would, she'd be babysitting me. She's like, okay, we're taking Bart. We're going to the Mission in San Francisco. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? And she was like, well, of course, we're just gonna walk around and take posters off telephone poles. Like, come on. So that was how I spent a lot of time with her. And that's part of how, other than obviously being very close with many of the artists who created these incredible posters, but also she was just out in the community all the time asking, hey, that event's over. Can I have that poster that's in your shop window?
Ricardo and I were both, when we were in LA, right in the middle of the Chicano movement, the school walkouts, the great boycotts, and we did boycott it, in front of the grocery stores. We participated in some of the meetings about the walkouts in the LA schools. So we were both working with young people I was in Lenox and Venice, before Venice was a marina, and he was in East LA. And so when we heard about self-help graphics and realized that they were reaching out to young people, they were bringing in artists from the community and showing these young people how to do the prints, and the work that they were doing were so representative of what was going on in LA and the issues involved in the students that we both taught. And then when we went to their exhibits, they were so beautiful that we bought as many as we could. Of course, then we were, on teacher salaries going to graduate school. And like Gil, we couldn't afford very much, but we'd buy as many as we could.
Yeah, early on, we could call us the accidental collectors.
Yes.
Because I had iconic, and I'm saying iconic images of heroes and heroines from the historic past, whether it's Lolita Lebron in Puerto Rican posters, or Frida Kahlo in Chicano posters, or many other images of people that were important in the history. And so you were learning your history. Again, you would say, well, who is that person? And she would say, well, Lolita Lebron was one of the leaders for Puerto Rican independence and so on.
And my aunt picked up on it. And she, I remember, started Chicano studies lessons for me. I would march over there on Wednesday afternoons, and she began the process of really educating me about our culture, our history, showing me the posters, showing me imagery of women who looked like me. And that just had a completely transformative experience for me, made me begin to love myself and my identity. And I think that's what she really wants for the Latinx community and others to see in these posters, is to see themselves and see a validation of their experience.
I really got interested in talking with them, addressing issues about our community. I remember reading a book, can't remember the title, where Jean Charlot was quoted about his idea of art for the people, which really solidified my interest in collecting works that were created for the purpose of advancing the conditions of our community, and also at the time, artwork that was not necessarily created for sale in the art market.
The Latino posters within this experience are not just part of a cultural appendage. It's not an appendage to American art, they are American art. And American art is Latino art, and Latino art is American art.
So I began to really develop a strong commitment to work with others who are working to change the institution inside, as well as people who are outside trying to make a difference to get the Smithsonian. We see the Smithsonian as a national museum, and it tells the story of the American people nationally. But how can it tell it if it doesn't have an understanding of the Latino situation in the United States, nor does it have an understanding about Latino art?
Having this art in institutions like the Smithsonian, like the McNay, like the prominent museums around the country, what this does for the Latino artist, for the Chicano artist, that I was very moved when Sam Coronado saw one of his pieces, one of his first pieces to be in a major museum. And he said that, it was one of the most self-fulfilling incidences in his career. And so this is important for the artist as well. And many of these artists are not known to the curators until they see them in your collection, Gil, or in Rosa and your aunt's collection and in our collection. And then they recognize the talented community that's out there that more people should be aware of. So these kinds of exhibits are doing wonderful things for the community, but also for the Chicano artist as well.
The complete honor to donate works to the Smithsonian, to have this opportunity to have not only this incredible part of Chicano history and artwork be available on a national scale, but also to elevate someone such as my aunt, Margie Santos, who was a queer woman of color, who was really a trailblazer. And those are the kinds of role models that we need to see elevated right now. And also the individuals that are depicted in the posters and the artwork are also role models, and representation really matters. And we actually have all the role models we need. We just need to have them be shown, displayed, talked about, written about. And that's a huge part, Carmen, of why we did this, was because we know what an incredible job the Smithsonian does with allowing scholars access, students access, digital access. So thank you for letting these kind of stories and role models be able to be actually seen.
That it's important to have Latino culture as American culture, to be understood as American culture, and for the whole world that comes to the Smithsonian, not just in the US, but from abroad as well, to recognize Chicano culture as American culture and to see it at the Smithsonian, to study the work created by these artists, the histories, and the other materials that are made available through your work, as well as the other institutions at the Smithsonian.
Because I felt that all of these Latino arts organizations, Puerto Rican arts organizations, Cuban arts organizations, were working for their ethnic communities specifically, but the Smithsonian had a broad base to include all the communities, and that it was beginning to realize that Chicano art was American art, and American art is Chicano art, and the Smithsonian was the only one that had that viewpoint, and therefore I decided that this is a place which is the core where all the cultural heritage and the cultural treasures of the country are held. And I felt modestly that the Chicano posters needed to be in a place that was where the heritage and the treasures of American art were held, because Chicano art was American art. And that's why I decided to give it to Smithsonian.
I hope that you enjoyed that excerpt of these wonderful interviews that I had. I really enjoyed sharing that time with with those wonderful people. We have one question in the chat, and the question is for our artists. How has COVID-19 and the recent protests impacted your work?
I would say it's impacted me in so many ways. I can't even imagine that would happen. You know, it's like a horrific to see all the number of people that are dying around us, and the fact that right now here in San Francisco, we're almost ready to go back into a lockdown. And I hear that's happening across the country. It's horrific and shocking. On a personal level, it's really, when it first started, it really hit me very hard. And if anything, I think it really affected me physically, because again, I'm going into 76, and it really like affected my body, and I've been going through physical therapy. But I think what's really sort of, even during this time when I've been going to physical therapy, I've come out of it now, but I have to say, thanks to all of the art organizations, all of the artists and all of that, who kept the music going, who kept the exhibits going and all of that, they totally lifted the spirits of the community. I hear that left and right. And I thank the Smithsonian, I thank Carmen and Claudia and all of you techie people for like pulling together in this time, this very, very serious time, to come together to make this exhibit happen. And I've seen the young people again, because of my age and all of that, it's been very, very dangerous for me to be out there in all of the strikes, all of the marches against, for Black Lives Matter and all of that. But to see all of the Day of the Dead activities that continued in the streets here in San Francisco to memorialize those who have been killed by the police, our ancestors and what have you, and also to see organizations like Galeria de la Raza under the leadership of our young staff, Ani Rivera and Yvette Diaz, who came together to do some interventions in the street regarding the census and how that impacts the community. So there's just a lot of work going on out there. The walls, the businesses being covered up with plywood, and artists going out and like creating images of hope, of memorialization, memorializing, I can't even say it, those who have been killed, giving information about how to deal with the pandemic that we're dealing with. There's just a lot that has been going on that really gives me a lot of hope. And again, although I can't be out there because I'm a vulnerable age and all of that, it has really inspired me and given me like a lot of hope for the future. Our young people rising to the occasion in spite of all of the danger that surrounds us. They're out there looking out for the community. And it makes me really feel good. And I just hope that everybody stays safe so that we can continue our work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but the first thing is to stay safe. So I close with that.
Thank you, Esther.
All right. Yeah, I could go. Basically, I feel like what I'm more concerned about is that how it's impacted my family and my son, my daughter, their work, and my grandkids. For me, I'm retired and I'm home working in my studio. So that part of it, like Esther said, basically, I've been impacted in the sense that I've been really moved and motivated by the young people that have been out in the streets and fighting and resisting. I think and I've been pretty prolific in terms of the things that I've produced during this time. But again, coming off of the civil rights movement and what that taught us, and again, I see, Black activists and Black folks basically taking the lead on the changes that we need to make in this country. And But I also, one of the things that I've seen from the demonstrations is that there's a lot of young white folks out there, youngsters out there protesting, and I think it's more than needed. It's about time, because if they don't take a stand with their own family and their own kind, they're leaving it to us to have to do that. So when I see them out there, I'm like, good, get your heads bashed in or whatever. Hopefully not, but I'm saying, you know what I mean? But I think they need to take a stand.
Mhm.
And it's time. It's already past time. But I applaud the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's reinvigorated us as artists and as people in the movement. So I say right on. Let's keep doing it. That's it.
Just like Rupert's poster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, down with this whiteness.
Zeke, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just, I think in terms of the pandemic, I haven't been productive at all. It's been a little bit difficult to work, but I'm definitely grateful, to have the privilege that I have to be at least, sheltered from it a little bit. I can stay home and work, and do my work from home. But, I think that it's unfortunately only highlighting and exaggerating something that our communities already know, especially in El Paso and Juarez, right? It's highlighting all of the ways that the state government has neglected our community, and how there's this turmoil, between that, because we're so far away. The fact that a lot of our state representatives don't have offices in our community says it all. So I think that, with these challenges, and, especially with, the Black Lives Matter movement, again, not that we needed any other reason, to, we don't need any more examples, this stuff happens in the community all the time. And I think that, unfortunately, that's what it took. But I am grateful that it has served to mobilize more people beyond the people who are dealing with the issues on a day-to-day basis, and engaged, especially the young folks from the communities that are typically not affected by these issues. And so I think that, if anything, one thing I was grateful about at the beginning of the pandemic was that some people, not all people, especially not essential workers and our medical workers, working class folks, but most people took a little pause. And for me, that pause was really important for, being able to reflect on exactly what was going on, and to be upfront and honest with a lot of the things that were going on. But I just hope that, people, if you can and have the privilege to stay home, can stay home and safe. And, I just wish the best for my community in El Paso and Juarez, and all the people, everyone that's dealing with it. So.
Thank you. Thank you all for your reflections, and for taking part in this discussion. We're delighted to have spent this time with you as we celebrate the opening of Printing the Revolution. I want to remind all of our viewers to please visit our exhibition webpage for updates on virtual artist panels that we'll present starting in January 2021. We've also begun publishing blog posts about our exhibition on SAAM's blog, Eye Level. The catalog, which includes essays by Claudia and myself, as well as the eminent print scholars Ester Romo and Tatiana Reynosa, is available for purchase. More information is available in the chat. In February 2021, and I'm really excited about this, we'll have a virtual tour of the exhibition available on our website, featuring 360 photography. This online feature will allow you to virtually walk through the entire exhibition. I also want to thank the SAAM family for working so hard on this exhibition. While Stephanie, Claudia, and I stand here as representatives of SAAM, know that it takes a village to mount an exhibition of this scope. I now turn the table over to our director, Stephanie Stevich.
Thank you again, Carmen. I could have listened all evening to you, Juan and Esther and Zeke, and we look forward to hearing from you and the other artists as we celebrate this exhibition. I'm so grateful you've joined us this evening. We do want to celebrate the artists from the exhibition, the kind lenders to live without some artworks. Most of the exhibition really does come from our own collection, and the generous donors as well. I also want to thank you for being part of the Smithsonian American Art Museum family. I want to also close with an update. This afternoon, our secretary, Smithsonian Secretary Bunch, who is my boss, announced the need for us to close all of the Smithsonian museums given the rising number of COVID-19 infections. We have put safety first for our visitors and our staff during this time, and it is really the prudent thing to do. When we reopened, we always knew that we might need to close again if conditions changed. So all Smithsonian museums, including the Smithsonian American Art Museum, will be closed beginning Monday, November 23rd, and look for updates for our reopening. This is certainly disappointing news. I was in the galleries today just savoring the installation, enjoying the wonderful labels in English and in Spanish. And as Carmen mentioned, we're going to do our very best as we close the physical doors to open our digital doors to you. For those of you, again, who are in the area, we close on Monday. So if you can come on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, we'd be delighted to see you. Please secure free timed entry passes. There's a link on our visit page on our website. So think of this as a little bit of a winter hibernation. We'll reopen again and share the beauty of this exhibition and our collections with you soon. And really, best of all, the exhibition, Printing the Revolution, does not close until 2021. It doesn't close until August 8th. In the meantime, I have to really recommend this fabulous catalog. It's terrific. And as I was saying earlier, backstage, it's selling, I promise you, it will sell like hotcakes, but Esther corrected me, it will sell like tortillas. So it will be the scholarly and frankly, kind of the general book on this topic. I can predict that as well. Maybe you make it a gift for yourself or someone else. And again, please stay connected with SAAM. We'd love to tell you about the exciting programming we have in store for you. And we're gonna end this evening with some more images from the exhibition to entice you to learn more, to make plans to come, and to learn about this fascinating printmaking field that has frankly been overlooked. And so it's a very important moment for the Smithsonian American Art Museum to be the leader with this kind of an exhibition and these important additions to our collection. So again, thank you for joining us and being a part of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Good evening.
Thank you.